Hello all, and welcome to the free agent edition of the Citizen NFL podcast. After what seems like years away, I am your host, Justin Ritzel, joined by two guys who hopefully still remember what football is. Robert Harding and Chris Sciria. Guys, unlike Tiger Woods, we are back.
Oh, you went there. You went there. I won't touch that for the sake of our football fans. But let's just say, I disagree.
Of course you do. Of course. That's the kind of mood I want you to get into as we're about to start this podcast, is a disagreeable one.
Just mention Jarvis Landry, and we'll get this show on the road.
What? He's gone. Or as he said, he gone. Jarvis in English, not exactly on compatible terms there. If you read his tweets, he wasn't exactly an English major at LSU. But he's got a lot of millions of reasons to not have to worry about ever obtaining his college degree.
What is it, 16 million reasons?
15.9 or something, around that number. So, yeah. Good for Jarvis. Good for him.
He didn't sign a new deal with the Browns?
Browns have not signed him to a long-term deal. He's still a one-year player. He could conceivably be leaving Cleveland after this season.
Good for him.
Maybe go to Buffalo.
Love to have him.
Mm-hmm. Sure you would.
I would.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, we'll touch a little bit on the Dolphins in a minute, but we'd be remiss to not talk about all the moves the Buffalo Bills have made.
Indeed, sir.
Starting with another trade that involved the Cleveland Browns.
Mm-hmm.
The end of last week, the Bills traded starting quarterback Tyrod Taylor to the Cleveland Browns for the first pick of the third round. I mean, were you shocked? Were you guys shocked when this went down? Were you expecting it?
That's a surprise.
Were you happy with the return?
I'm happy with the return. That was a surprising part to me. It seemed that even though the Bean-McDermott tag team seemed to suggest that, maybe Tyrod will be around, everyone kind of knew what their plan is, which is they want to draft a quarterback. And it didn't really make sense to have Tyrod there when you could get something in return for him. And to get a high third-round pick out of the Browns, giving the Bills 6 picks again in the first 3 rounds is a pretty nice move. I like it as a Bills fan.
So, Robert, for once you showed up prepared to this thing, and you mentioned before that you have some notes written down there. So, can you just share exactly what picks the Bills now have?
The Bills now have in the first round picks 12 and 22. The 12 comes from the Cincinnati trade, which we didn't talk about.
Bills traded left tackle Cordy Glenn to move up to that pick. So
that's right. And so they gave up. They were at 21, so they move up 9 spots to get to 12, which was the Bengals' former pick. In round 2, they have 53 and 56. Round 3, 65 and 96. They also have a 4th rounder now, which I don't believe they had before, and they have a 5th rounder. And I believe through the Cincinnati trade they acquired a 6th rounder, the 187th pick overall. So they now have picks at least in each of the first 6 rounds. They didn't have 6th and 7th round picks before, so that's where they stand.
So the main thing is that they own 2 picks in the first round. Mm-hmm. First one is the 12th pick, and the second one is the 22nd pick, you said?
Correct.
Now, Chris, you and I were talking last night about what teams are going to be looking at quarterbacks in the first round. Do you think that the Bills can stand pat with the 12th pick and get the quarterback they want, or do you think they're going to have to move up again?
Well, if there's a certain person they want, I think you don't take any chances and you try to move up. But that being said, we've talked about four or five guys that are, you would say, surefire number one picks. Rosen, Mayfield, Jackson, Allen, and Darnold, I believe. Yeah, so those five. And we looked at the teams in the top 12 of the draft, and realistically, not that many are going to need a quarterback. We said that most of the teams really already set a quarterback. Now, there are some teams that could draft a quarterback that may not, but like the Giants, that could happen. So we'll see. But basically, it looks like Cleveland will definitely pick a quarterback with one of their top picks. The Broncos are a possibility.
Yeah, well, as I kind of said to you last night, there's just a lot of teams there that should draft a quarterback, but kind of already have like a stopgap there, and it's just a matter of if they're going to want to take the swing this year and kind of have somebody there ready to groom, or if they're just going to be like, we'll just roll with the guy that we have for this year and then push it off down the road, like the Giants. Like they could easily say, you know what, we're gonna draft a defensive player. We're just going to roll with Eli for one more year and whatever. And, I mean, obviously that would help the Bills because that leaves one more guy on the board.
Like the Jets.
Same thing.
Yeah, they signed Teddy Bridgewater, and
they're bringing back
McCown, who played well last year. So, I mean, should the Jets, as many issues as they have, although they did play, look, that team did play hard last year, and they did have a solid defense. So, I mean, what's to say the Jets don't use their first-round pick to draft a running back or a wide receiver, or an offensive lineman or somebody else on defense? But, I think that their fan base wants a QB, and I think the Jets probably will draft a QB.
I mean, I think Bridgewater only signed 1 year, so it's not like they're committed to him long-term.
No.
Same thing with McCown, I think, too.
Yeah. The question is, I don't know what the draft's going to look like for 2019 with quarterbacks, kids who are juniors and seniors to be coming into college football, but it seems like this year's a bumper crop that, it's if you have a chance, you take one of these guys that you think are going to be good. So next year it may not be as many good quarterbacks as this year, so.
It's a quarterback-rich draft class, that's for sure.
So, Robert, I'm going to ask you to put on your Mike Mayock hat here.
Oh, boy.
Which quarterback do you want? Which do you want, and which do you think will be holding up a Bills uniform come April 27th?
The answer to both is Josh Rosen out of UCLA. I've seen enough of kind of the top three. I've also seen a lot of Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson, but really the focus has been on Josh Allen, Josh Rosen, and Sam Darnold out of USC. And they all have their strengths, but I think Rosen is a guy who can come in and be a playmaker, and if needed in his rookie year, be a starting quarterback. I've seen enough of Darnold to kind of question whether he's the type of guy that would be able to come in year one or even year two and be a starter. I think he still needs some development. Allen has some accuracy issues. He can throw a great deep ball, but he has a lot of trouble with the shorter and intermediate routes that we know in today's NFL are a must. You need to make those throws. And so with Rosen, I just think he's the guy that the Bills should target, and the guy that I want the Bills to target. And they're going to need to move up to do it. 12 isn't going to be good enough to get either of those guys, I don't think. They're going to need to move up further. They're going to need to get into the top 5, I think, honestly, to get to land one of those guys. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Rosen's my guy, though.
You know who each team needs to avoid? Sam Darnold. You know why? Because he's a redhead.
Oh,
how many redheads
wow,
are
ginger
how many
bias.
redheads are good quarterbacks? Because really the best redhead quarterbacks are like Andy Dalton and
Hey.
Boomer Esiason.
Boomer
watch
was blonde.
You watch your
Was he?
tongue. Andy
Yeah.
Dalton got the Bills in the
See,
playoffs.
so it's just
Boomer
Andy
is
Dalton.
blonde. I'm trying to think what other I'm thinking back to when I was young, back in the 70s and 80s. Were there any redheaded quarterbacks? And I can't remember. I can't remember any off the top of my head. But I mean, Andy Dalton seems to be the only one that comes to mind. I can't think of any other.
It's natural selection because
now I gotta
they
look,
weed out the redheaded quarterbacks because it's just weird. So they're like, as they're
And he wears 14.
once they get to college, people are like, we're not going to recruit this kid because red-haired kids aren't good quarterbacks. This isn't real.
All right. Here we go.
Chris is pulling up a list, right?
We got Sonny Jurgensen
Oh, wow.
from the Redskins. Todd Marinovich. You remember Todd Marinovich?
Sure.
You don't remember? Come on, you know Todd Marinovich. Don't you remember he was a 30 for 30?
Yeah, I remember.
He was at USC, the Raiders.
Yeah.
His father raised him to be a quarterback. I mean,
How'd that work out?
well, the kid got involved in drugs. Okay, I mean, it's actually kind of sad because the kid's father didn't let the kid have a real childhood when he was growing up, and as a result, he basically just went off the grid, so to speak. Brandon Whedon.
See, this is exactly my point. Is this stirring any confidence
No.
in Sam Darnold?
Sonny Jurgensen was a good quarterback back in the day.
Yeah. I'll give you that. The exception to the rule, I suppose.
Yeah. Carson Wentz.
Oh, now we're on to something.
Carson Wentz.
He's like I'm talking I guess Sam Darnold.
Flamin' redhead.
Sam Darnold falls more in the semi-redhead category,
Hold
which
on,
I guess Carson Wentz would
I got
too.
somebody here who I think is worthy of mention. I'm not going to say his name, but
Well, that's going to make it difficult.
I know, but identify the guy on the left there.
So Jeff Garcia.
Jeff Garcia. Wow.
Who looked
Yeah,
like
he is a
Fire
redhead.
Marshal Bill from In Living Color. He
Wow,
did.
okay.
You never heard that comparison. Jeff Garcia looked like Fire Marshal Bill from In Living Color. That the Jim Carrey character was always blowing himself up. Okay, never mind.
He's killing himself over there.
That's funny, man.
We take a
Forget
month.
about Jeff Garcia.
We take a month and a half off the podcast, and yet we still are able to throw it off the rails.
Jeff Garcia,
That's right.
man. All right, enough of the redheads.
All right. So just to wrap it up on the Bills quick, kind of how do you feel about their overall moves here as a whole? Because obviously they now don't have a left tackle. They've signed a couple free agents. What do you think?
Well, I mean, they do have Deion Dawkins, who I think will end up being their full-time left tackle going forward. But they do have other gaps along the offensive line they need to fill. They lost Eric Wood. Will probably lose Eric Wood to retirement. So do you go with Ryan Groy at center? Do you bring in someone else? Maybe you draft someone. On defense, they've made some signings. They have 4 free agent signings, one of which today just came out. Trent Murphy, defensive end, who didn't play last year. The year before, he had nine sacks for Washington. So I mean, overall, and especially with what they did in the draft to hopefully set themselves up to move up to take a quarterback, I think they've done very well this offseason to make the moves necessary to not only stay competitive, but to build the team that they want to build for the long term. So we'll see how the draft plays out, but so far so good for the Bills offseason.
So, Robert, you mentioned how Josh Rosen could potentially step in if the Bills are able to draft him, and he could start right away, but that's probably not ideal. Mm-hmm. You probably want a veteran quarterback there that can at least start the first 8 games or so of the season this year, if not the entire season, and yet here we are, many of the veteran quarterbacks have been taken. Are you concerned about that?
I mean, it depends on what they do going forward. I mean, we'll get into it later, but they were linked to the Bradfords, the Keenums, some other guys out there. Obviously, they went to other teams, so it does make you wonder. Okay, what's their view on the quarterback position in 2018? Is the guy they're going to draft be the starter, being a high pick? Is that what their plan is? Do they think that can work? They are bolstering the defense, so maybe they think, well, that might take some pressure off a rookie quarterback. But, I mean, to me, you want to give the guy a year. You want to give him some chance to develop. Maybe, if it comes to that, you insert him in some games just to get him time. But I think the ideal situation is kind of give him a year to develop, and look at Carson Wentz and what that did. I mean, he had a chance to develop a little bit. I mean, he did get some time in his rookie year to play, but really it was in his second year that he was the full-time starter, and he showed what he can do, and that year makes all the difference. And I could see them, bringing in a free agent quarterback. There's not a lot left at this point. I could also see them, strangely enough, leaning on Nate Peterman.
There he is. I was wondering if we were going to hear his name.
So, well, they sure as hell are going to sign Matt Moore, whatever those rumors came from.
One bad game, and look what happens to poor Nate.
Yeah, 5 picks. But, I mean, we'll see. I mean, but ideally, I think they want to give him the time to develop, get his feet wet in the NFL and come in year 2 and be the guy.
All right, Chris. I want you to reach in your back pocket, pull out the biggest homer hat you can find, and tell me why this offseason for the Dolphins hasn't been a total disaster.
Well, look, first of all,
it's been a dog off season.
Let's wait till the draft's over, okay? I mean, really, I think
that's fair.
In this microwave society, we basically say, oh, what happened on the first day of free agency? Oh, they didn't do anything. Oh, it's a failure of an offseason. Let's see what happens in the draft.
Did you say microwave society?
Yeah, microwave society. We expect everything now,
Damn right.
Now. I mean, that's what we expect. I mean, Dolphins should be a winning team now, okay? I mean, look, the Dolphins did a couple things. Number one, they needed to clear some salary cap space. And number two, they wanted to change the chemistry in the locker room. I think last season kind of showed some players' true colors. And I think that the hierarchy of the Dolphins' brain trust didn't like what they saw from some players. And as a result, bye-bye. And I hate to see Jarvis Landry go. I mean, I thought the guy, he always played hard and everything, but I mean, it's obvious he had a bit of an attitude problem last season. And as a result, the Dolphins decided to do something. They franchise tagged him, and then they traded him to Cleveland for 4th and 7th round draft selections there. So, I would have liked to see Jarvis stay as a Dolphin, but it wasn't meant to be, and I understand why they did it, and they did it. Ndamukong Suh, I mean, look, this is a guy that his first year I thought had bad attitude, but the last couple of years he's changed. But that being said, he was signed to a bad contract from the get-go. Mike Tannenbaum was a dog contract. It was a horrible contract. And as a result, the Dolphins had to do something, and they decided to dump Suh. I mean, look, they didn't play that well with Suh, so can you play much worse without him? And they traded for Robert Quinn from the Rams last week, and I think that's a good move. And I'm not really overly worried about the Dolphins' defensive line taking a massive hit because Ndamukong Suh is no longer wearing aqua and orange. So, there's other moves they got to make. I mean, they got to bolster the offensive line. I think that they could definitely, a linebacker would be good. Tight end is a glaring weakness right now with Miami. So they've got their positions of need, and I'm hoping that they'll probably do some of these things in free agency with some minor guys because they don't have a ton of salary cap room, but they can sign some halfway decent players, and maybe they might be diamonds in the rough. And then the draft. I mean, realistically, I think if Miami is smart, they'll want to build in the draft. That's where all good teams, I mean, you're a Packers fan, you know that better than me. You build good teams through the draft, and that's what I'm hoping Miami does next month.
I think my biggest issue with what Miami did is, like, I totally understand, like, we want to instill a different kind of culture, a more responsible, professional culture. And I've said to you, like, I would not pay Jarvis Landry what he apparently wants to get paid. So I think that was totally the right move to say, hey Jarvis, thanks for what you've done for our team, but we're gonna part ways.
They offered him $13 million and he turned it down. Okay, I can't fault Miami for this because they made an offer in good faith, and Landry thought that he could get more, and he's going to get more because of the franchise tag. So I just got tired of his antics at the end of the season, and I'm going to miss him. But I think it was time for him to go. And the Dolphins signed Danny Amendola from the Patriots, which, I don't think he's going to produce a lot, but I think they brought him in more for his locker room leadership skills and setting examples for the younger players. Devontae Parker is a guy that he's going to get a lot of scrutiny this year because this is his fourth year, and this is a guy who was like the 15th pick in the draft in 2015, and a lot's been expected of him, and he's been hurt or he just hasn't put it together. So I think this is a make or break year for Devontae Parker because he'll be cut. Or he'll be gone in free agency next year if he doesn't produce this year. So, if he lives up to his potential, the Dolphins' passing game is going to be fine because Kenny Still's still a good deep threat, and like I said, Amendola for the short routes. So, I like the Dolphins' wide receivers right now, but these guys have to produce. Simple as that. And if they do, then I think they'll be fine.
Don't forget Albert Wilson, who they just signed.
Yes, I'm sorry, you're right, and he's a solid player, but I think. That was I wouldn't say it's a sign of desperation, but I don't think that guy's going to be a great player. I could be wrong, but
he's getting $8 million a year.
Yeah, I know, but
and that's the point I was getting to. So
and realistically, that's what Landry should have been.
I don't understand saying, Jarvis Landry, we're not going to pay you the money you want, but we're going to bring in 2 receivers and ultimately pay them, who are two lesser players,
right,
and pay them the same amount that you would have.
A little bit less. I think Hall is $8 million, and I think Amendola is like what, 4 or maybe 6 if that. I think it's.
So it's a few million difference, but it's not
a
lot.
But you're getting 2 for the price of 1, though. You're ultimately getting 2 wide receivers for the price of 1. Although that 1 is obviously pretty darn good. So, but I understand what they were doing. I'm not saying it's going to work, but I understand where they're coming from.
Chris, do you think the Dolphins are staying level? Are they trending upward or downward? Because you look going into 2017, you're coming off a playoff appearance, and are you happy with how things are going? Are these changes necessary?
I think some of the changes are necessary, but to be able to say are they going up, are they going down, are they level? It's difficult to say because last year really was like Murphy's Law of football seasons. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. First week of training camp, Tannehill goes down. You lose your starting quarterback right off the bat. The hurricane, Irma, they lose their home opener, and they have to go on the road for like the first month of the season. They don't have a home game until October. They had to go to London as part of that. It just seemed like a lot of things. And obviously some of it was their own doing. You have an offensive line coach who's blowing coke in his office. Like I said, it was unbelievable all the crap that went wrong with this team.
That was solid form there.
But on the other hand, they were the second most penalized team in the NFL. That's coaching, okay, and some of it's self-discipline too, okay. Sue went offside how many times? 7 or 8 times during the season, okay. Landry, okay? I think if the Dolphins can become a little bit of a smarter football team and cut down on the penalties, and Tannehill comes back and he basically picks up where he left off before he got hurt early December of 2016, and the wide receivers play up to their potential, and the defense gets their act together, I think the Dolphins would be moving upward just because they went 6-10. They would be a better team just because of those things. And I think if Tannehill had played last year, they wouldn't have gone 6-10. I think they would have had a better record.
7-9.
I think 9-7, but that's just me. I'm not saying they would have been a playoff team or they would have been a contender, but I'm saying they would have been better than 6-10.
He's saying they could have been an Andy Dalton miracle throw away from making the playoffs.
Ooh, I know. Remember the Bills almost tried to, do everything they could not to make the playoffs, but they were doing some of these things like, what was called tanking. Watkins, Darby. How many players did they get rid of? Okay. And, they to their credit, they played hard and they earned their playoff spot. But like you just said, basically an Andy Dalton miracle from not making the playoffs. So,
And 2 Dolphin wins.
And well, the Dolphins. Look, I've said this before. The Dolphins basically gave that game to the Bills. They didn't care. I mean, come on. I watched that game. I know body language. I know effort, and they did not play like professionals. They actually did put up a decent effort in the fourth quarter, but by then it was too late. In the first half, you could tell there were players that just didn't care, and that really bothered me. And I think as a result, that's why Landry's gone. I think that last game really was the straw that broke the camel's back with Miami and Landry. That his attitude in that game, getting ejected, the way he played, that was it. They didn't want him, so be it.
Well, guys, I'm just going to take a moment here to metaphorically pour one out for the great white hope, Jordy Nelson, who was released by the Packers, one of the greatest receivers in franchise history.
Indeed.
Will be now playing elsewhere.
Top 4 or 5 in Packers history, would you say?
Statistically, he's about top. He's like number 3.
He's no Don Hudson.
He's definitely not Don Hudson. Statistically, he's behind Donald Driver. I think Jordy Nelson is a better receiver than Donald Driver.
Sure. Yeah.
But statistically, he's easily in the top 5.
Sterling Sharp.
Yeah, he's another one cut short by injury. But yeah, I'm a little sad.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's when you lose a player that you've rooted for a long time, it's difficult to see the guy go. I mean, I know when Cameron Wake, whenever he leaves the Dolphins, that's going to be a tough day. I mean, you have guys that just play their tails off for a number of years, and
it's like you can't imagine them playing in another uniform.
Right, you can't. But unfortunately, it's a business, and these things happen.
What if he goes to the Seahawks?
See, now here's the thing: is some of these teams that
Patriots.
he's rumored to have
Patriots, right?
Yeah, rumored to
Saints.
be talking to are teams that I would prefer he didn't go to because it would just make me.
Oh, but at least if you played in New England, you wouldn't see them. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the Packers.
They
do
play
play
at
New
England.
England. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they do play
The
the
AFC East is
Yeah,
up.
I guess Justin will have to have a small wager this coming season when the Dolphins play the Packers.
Shouldn't talk about gambling on the podcast, Chris.
It said wager
until it's illegal, or until it's legal.
And then say we're betting for money. It could just be a small beverage. So, anyways.
So, Jordy, I'm just begging you. Don't go to New England and don't go to Seattle. You can go anywhere else. You want to go to the Raiders, who he has a visit with? Okay. You want to go to the Saints? By all means. Stay away from Tom Brady and Russell Wilson. Please.
What about the Jimmy Graham addition? What do you think he brings to the offense?
See, and that's the reason why they cut Jordy is because they were opening up salary for Jimmy Graham. I mean, they've been basically just trying to throw darts at a dartboard with the tight end position. Like they went with Richard Rodgers, the Hail Mary hero. He was their starter in 2015. Just not really not a difference maker. They signed Jared Cook for 2016. He had that awesome catch against Dallas in the playoffs, which basically won them that game. Then they played hardball in the off season, and they let him go. That was a mistake in my opinion. They bring in Martellus Bennett, who was just a giant headache. Literally quit on the team when Rodgers got hurt last year. He went out the door. So, I mean, at the very least, Jimmy Graham is super athletic, and will score touchdowns. You hope. We'll see. I mean, he's $10 million a year. It's a little pricey, but we'll see what happens. They need some dynamic players on offense, so we'll see what happens. Let's stick within the NFC North, because the Packers were not the only team up there to make a big free agent move. Arguably the biggest free agent move
Huge.
was Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Signing a fully guaranteed contract with the Minnesota Vikings.
Shira-esque.
I mean,
please.
We know the Vikings went to the NFC Championship game last year with Case Keenum, who played very, very well last season. Was this a worthwhile move for the Vikings, Chris?
No.
Interesting.
Because I think the Vikings, their strength is their defense. And that's not going to change. Solid running game, decent wide receiver core. I mean, can Kirk Cousins play that well where he makes a huge difference? I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, it's not. I mean, look, Kirk Cousins was a very good quarterback with the Redskins, but I wouldn't put him in the class of Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. I mean, he is an above average quarterback, okay, but he's not a franchise quarterback like the guys I just mentioned. So I think that he can't hurt the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings are. I mean, look, the Vikings got to the NFC Championship game with Case Keenum. So I think they can definitely get back with Sam. I'm sorry, I was going to say Sam Bradford for a second. I'm sorry, Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins. I'm sorry, because Sam Bradford played for the Vikings too.
Yeah.
So they could definitely get back with Kirk Cousins. But is Kirk Cousins enough to get them over the hump and get them to the Super Bowl? Well, we'll find out. But I don't think so. I just think that he'll keep this team they'll be the best team in the NFC North. But we'll see what happens.
Robert, your thoughts?
I like the move, and I do think Cousins is a franchise quarterback. Do I think he's on the same tier as the Rodgers, the Bradys, the Drew Breeses of the world? No, but he's certainly a top 10 NFL quarterback. Certainly has the stats like one. We forget in Washington that franchise from top to bottom, whether it's Dan Snyder or the coaching staff, they've had plenty of weaknesses and problems over the years, and so Cousins was really a bright spot for them on an otherwise mediocre team. With the Vikings, he comes in, as Chris mentioned, they have a great defense. Do I think Cousins, if he was on the Vikings last year, would have made a difference? No, because the Eagles were just too good. They went into Philly and just got annihilated. Wasn't even close, and so. But I think with Cousins, they have some stability at quarterback. They did have a lot of question marks. Is it Bridgewater? Is it Bradford? Is it Keenum? Now you have stability. You have Cousins in there. He's your starter at least for the next few years. He's a great quarterback. You have all the other pieces pretty much in place. The defense. You have a solid running game there. I think they come out and they're still one of the top 5 best teams in the league right now, and certainly a legitimate Super Bowl contender for next year. So I think I like the Cousins move. I think it gives them that added bonus because the other thing is, with Cousins that he's a proven commodity. We don't know if Keenum could repeat what he did in 2017. He's been a decent quarterback in his career, but he hasn't been that good. And so you wonder, was that the exception? We'll find out in Denver this year. But, Bradford, I think would have been okay if they went that route. But to me, Cousins gives them an added bonus on offense and makes that offense much better than it was last year.
I think for me, if you just look at what the Vikings can do in 2018, yeah, I think they're very, very dangerous. I'm picturing Kirk Cousins throwing to Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen against a very porous Green Bay secondary right now, and it's giving me nightmares.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they have a lot of key defensive players that are going to be coming up due for new contracts, and now money's not going to be there because they committed to Kirk Cousins. So it is a balancing act of, yes, is Kirk Cousins a better quarterback than Case Keenum? I would say yes. Is he $12 million better per year? I don't know. So are you robbing the strength of your team in future years to pay a quarterback who might not be a huge, huge, huge upgrade from what you had? Honestly, unless they just had major, major concerns about Teddy Bridgewater's leg and his status as being a starting quarterback, I don't understand why you don't bring him back for a year on a super cheap deal.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah.
I think without a doubt, the winners of the offseason so far are the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have won something, guys.
They haven't won
They won the
anything. They haven't won anything.
offseason. They won the offseason.
Look, let's see who they draft. Let's see the. I mean, look, you like to think Cleveland couldn't screw up this draft, but come on, they've screwed it up. Okay, they've screwed it up a lot. So let's not anoint anybody here. I mean, I don't want to be the champion of the offseason. Okay, I want to be the champion the first week of February. That's. If I'm a Browns fan, am I excited? Oh, absolutely. I'm thrilled. I'm ecstatic. I mean, it shows that maybe they actually have some people in place that know what the heck they're doing. But that being said, if I'm a Browns fan, I know that I've seen this movie before where a front office makes some bold moves and things that you think are going to be positive, and then look what happens. I mean, look what happened 3-4 years ago. They drafted Johnny Manziel. And they had two first round picks that year, so they drafted Manziel with one.
Seems like they have 2 first round picks.
And who they picked, and who was the other one? Barkevius Mingo or somebody like that. I mean, look, if I'm the Browns fan, I'm happy and everything, but I'm still like, hey, let's see what happens when we get out there come September and see what happens, because I mean these guys aren't going to transform overnight from 0-16 to 10-6. It's not going to happen. Okay, there's no way they go from 0-16 to double-digit wins. I literally will bet a couple of beverages for that. But irregardless, yeah, they're definitely trending up, because how could they get any worse? You're 0-16. How can you get any worse? Okay? So I like to see Cleveland be good. I mean, I like Cleveland, the city. I think they got great fans. But, I mean, let's not start going overboard here. Let's see what happens after they draft, and then how the pieces fit, and how Hugh Jackson actually does with a somewhat competent roster, maybe. Because remember, they're losing Joe Thomas. That hurts. Okay, I'm sorry. I know Robert seems to not be too impressed with. What the hell did Joe Thomas do? What did he do? Like snub you for an autograph or something?
You pissing your Cheerios
wow,
or something?
Man, no kidding. Like Joe Thomas.
He was a great offensive lineman.
Well, there you go.
Come on, I mean, he played on a dog team.
So what?
Of course, he's
literally
going to
not
look
his
good.
fault.
He literally played on
Not
the dog
his
team.
fault. The dog pound. I mean, look, it's not his fault that the rest of the team blew chunks. Okay, it's not his fault.
I'm not saying it is, but
I mean, he was like the lone bright spot on those Cleveland teams.
He blocked for some pretty crappy players in
Yeah,
his
well,
day.
not his fault. He did his job and did it quite well.
20 quarterbacks he blocked for.
I will.
20.
Hey, 2000 and what year are we talking about here? 2023. Joe Thomas will be making a short trip down Interstate 71 from Cleveland to Canton.
First ballot?
I think so.
Oh, boy.
I think so.
Fake news. My view on the Browns is that they're looking good. They have your daughter's favorite player now.
Wow.
Twist
the knife.
She's gonna
Twist the knife.
Is she gonna get the?
No, she's not getting a Browns jersey.
Browns jersey?
No, she's gonna wear her Landry jersey for a while.
Well, that's nice. They've got Tyrod Taylor, who's kind of a short term because they're one of the teams in the market for a quarterback. They want their franchise quarterback. They got 2 in the top 4. It seems like one of the picks that they could go with is Saquon Barkley. They've got options at quarterback, so they could look really good by the time the draft's over.
Well, here let me interject for a second. So this is what the Browns are currently looking like on offense. So okay, they have the opening at left tackle now. They did spend a lot of money on their offensive line last offseason. Mm-hmm. You would think that could at least be an average unit, maybe above average, depending on what they do at the draft. So I don't think that's a major concern. So Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, running back. They just signed Carlos Hyde today.
Yes.
They got Duke Johnson there, who's one of those nice kind of receiving backs. Their wide receivers are Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon,
yes,
who everyone seems to be forgetting about,
yes,
and Corey Coleman, who was pretty solid. I know he was banged up last year.
Don't forget the tight end.
And Njoku was last year's first-round pick. So, and that's before you even consider
that's a good offense.
What else they could do free agency or through the draft. And then, I mean, they have, I was telling Chris this, the Browns weren't like the worst defense in the world last year. They were kind of middle of the road. They have some pieces there. I mean, Myles Garrett, if they decide to take a Bradley Chubb, who's the top pass rusher in the draft this year, that's a quite a duo. I mean, I just look at it like I trust John Dorsey, who is the GM there now, who built the Kansas City Chiefs to an annual playoff team. Why not do the same in Cleveland? He's got a pedigree. That's the one thing you can say about him versus some of these other GMs that the Browns have had, is now they have a guy who has done it.
Yeah.
He's built the team. So I'm feeling optimistic about the Browns.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl.
No.
Not saying that they're going to even make the playoffs. I am saying they're going to be a fun team to watch in 2018.
I agree. I think they can win some games and play spoiler in that AFC North, because they've been bullied around for many years now, between whether it's the Ravens, even the Bengals, of course the Steelers, and I think they'll be able to play spoiler a little bit this year. I don't think they're going to win 8 or 9 games, but I think they'll put 5, 6, 7 wins together, especially with the offense that they could have even after the draft. I mean, they're going to have some playmakers on that team and some very good players. So, as long as the defense plays well, they can compete just like anybody else. So, good for them.
All right, guys. Before we wrap it up here, just one big other free agency transaction that has stuck out to you guys, whether it be like a very, very good one that you really liked, or maybe one that's got you scratching your head a little bit.
Sammy Watkins to the Chiefs. I thought for the Chiefs is a good move. They lost Wilson. They have Tyreek Hill already there. With Watkins, you get more of kind of a traditional deep threat and type of receiver. With Hill, he's more of a versatile playmaker. He can catch a short pass and just take off. He can handle crossing routes and that kind of thing. With Watkins, he's more of a down the field threat. And so, for Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's got some options to throw to. Of course, Travis Kelce's still there. You've got Watkins on the outside with Hill, looking pretty good for him as he begins his tenure as the Chiefs starter. So that move to me stuck out. I think that shows that the Chiefs are committed to Mahomes, and they want to provide him put some weapons around him to make him successful.
I believe the Giants signed a offensive lineman from the Patriots.
Yeah, Nate Solder.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good move. I think the Giants desperately, I think their biggest weakness last year was offensive line. So I think that is a step in the right direction for the G-men.
You guys have been positive with this last little bit here. I'm going negative. What the hell are the Arizona Cardinals doing?
Because the Honey Badger got let go?
Well, so here's kind of the rundown of events. So the Cardinals were obviously they lost Bruce Arians. Carson Palmer retired. So obviously it's a team that's in transition. They were in the running apparently for Kirk Cousins.
Right.
One of the final 3 or 4 teams that were going after him. They didn't get him, so they decided, you know what? We'll sign some of these veteran quarterbacks. We're going to pick up Sam Bradford for a year, pay him $20 million. And you know what? Oh, Mike Glennon just got cut from the Bears. Yeah, we're going to bring him in too. They're going to battle it out. So we got $25 million tied up in those 2 clowns. Oh, well, now suddenly we don't have money. We're going to cut our second best defensive player in Tyrann Mathieu. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's I get why you'd want to bring in a quarterback, I guess, in addition to Bradford, but just how that contract was structured. To me, if you know you're going to get 2 guys, why would you dump so much money into one? And then getting rid of Tyrann Mathieu, that's ridiculous. I mean, he's a great safety in this league, when he's healthy, and to dump him because you can't afford him anymore because you're dumping so much money into your quarterbacks is a bad move. So, I'll be curious to see what they do in the draft too, because that'll even make the decision to hire or to sign 2 quarterbacks for that much money even stranger. Like, you have these guys on 1-year deals. I think if you're going to draft one, that's your long-term answer. Like, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you just sign one? Tough it out for the year, whether it's Glennon or Bradford. Bradford's the better option. Why wouldn't you live with that instead of dumping all that money into 2 guys and then having to cut some valuable pieces on either side of the ball? Yeah, that was a dog job by the front office, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald's got to just be like scratching his head, like,
What am I sticking around for?
what are we doing?
Yeah.
And then one last thing I want to throw in there. I like what the Chicago Bears have done.
Wow. Must take a lot for you to say.
The hated. No, they're not really hated because the Packers walk over them every year, but Bears signed the tight end there from
Trey Burton
from the Eagles, who apparently can also throw in case Trubisky's feeling a little confused.
Philly.
And then they grabbed Allen Robinson, solid wide receiver, and then Taylor Gabriel, nice speed demon on the outside as well from the Falcons. So I like what the Bears are doing, and now that I've said that, I'm going to go throw up.
I agree with you on the Bears. I similar to what the Chiefs did. I think they're giving Trubisky some weapons, and NFC North could be fun this year.
It's always fun. All right, we'll wrap it up there. This has been an off-season edition of the Citizen NFL podcast. For Robert Harding and Chris Sciria, I'm Justin.
$1.66 man.
I'm Justin Ritzel. We'll catch you next time.